Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for the warm introduction and the warm welcome. As she mentioned, I'm going to talk about the journey to strategy execution excellence. I'm Sameera Moinpour, and I am the VP of Customer Success at Workboard. And I get to work with amazing organizations in helping them on this journey. The reason any of us are interested in objectives and key results and interested in OKRs is not for the sake of just doing OKRs. It's to execute the strategy. So I love what Jim mentioned just in the last session as well, which is this is about executing the strategy. It's not a side project. It's not just for fun. It's not so we can all have another acronym because we have plenty of those. It's how do we really execute the strategy? So today I'm going to talk about what that journey looks like. We can go to the next slide. When we think about strategy and business performance, strategy should really be the golden thread that drives performance across the organization. Now, if we think about it today in terms of different roles in an organization, we have executives and executive teams, and their role is to fundamentally set the strategy, mobilize people on what that strategy is and their vision, provide visibility on those outcomes. That is fundamentally a leader's role. How do we communicate what our strategy is and align our organization on it? From there, managers in the organization, and for some of your organizations, that might be 3 layers. In other organizations, it might be 23 layers. But a manager's role in an organization is to translate the strategy from the company, from the business unit, from whomever is, in the chain above, if you will, and to translate that strategy and to drive accountability within their teams and then ultimately coach their team members to great outcomes. Managers are the glue between the executives and then the individuals in the organization. Individuals in the org are fundamentally responsible for executing on the most important outcomes and building their skills for the future, whether it be in their current organization or the next one. Now, in a perfect scenario, that strategy should be that golden thread in driving true performance. Today, it might not be for many orgs. Often, executives communicate the strategy, and let's say pre-OKRs for some organizations, everyone just goes and does a bunch of projects, everyone goes and does a bunch of work, and we hope that it all lines up and that it all connects back to ultimately the business outcomes we're driving. When you have the golden thread, everyone in the organization, whether you're an executive, a manager of teams, teams of teams, dynamic teams, whatever that might look like, all the way to individuals, we should see that flow and that thread from top to bottom and how the lowest level of execution and the kind of lowest level of work, if you will, contributes back to the outcomes that we're driving as an org. If we go to the next slide. Connecting that golden thread is a 3-stage journey, or we think of it as a 3-stage journey. No one perfects this skill in 1 quarter or overnight. No one gets good at writing OKRs in one session or in one go either. It's a journey, and it's a journey because, one, the world has shifted so quickly. What was true now in 2024 is, in the current state of the world, is different than what it was in 2016 or 1999. And so we need to be more intentional about how we connect that golden thread and how we communicate and translate the strategy through the organization. And so as you're driving this change in your organization as well, consider who your stakeholders are and take them on this journey with you, the journey I'm about to walk you through, and remind them that it is a journey. It's a learning journey, and there's phases and there's reward at every step of the journey. So phase 1, fast transparency. What does that mean? That means no matter what your current state of objective setting, goal setting, strategy communication, whatever it might be, start with a more digital view of what the objectives and results are, what the goals are in the organization. When you have more transparency, and when the organization has more transparency, we can actually assess where teams are. we can use that assessment and we can actually see, use that transparency to see, okay, where do we need to go optimize? How do we go optimize? Without having that transparency, we can think all we want on what does great look like, but we simply won't know until we see it. Which leads us to the next phase of the journey. So if we go, which is better alignment. Once we can see what those objectives and results are at whatever state and quality they are, then we can use that foundation of transparency to increase alignment, into better alignment. And when I talk about alignment, I'm talking about both alignment through functional teams and through the organization structure, and cross-functional alignment. Because often cross-functional alignment is one of the primary drivers of strategy. Now, here's what happens between phase 1 and phase 2. We provide the transparency, you see what's going on in the organization, and then you think, oh man, I don't like what I see. People don't know what they're supposed to be working on. People are measuring the wrong things. They don't know how to measure. They're working on the wrong things. A bunch of teams are working on the same thing. There's duplicative work happening everywhere. And at that point, many people think, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. You think of this analogy where if you're in the garden, there's a big rock in your garden. You pick up that rock, you see all the bugs and insects under it. Your tendency is to say, oh, I'm putting that rock right back down. In this case, you're going to say, no, you're keeping that rock up, and you're wiping off those bugs and insects and getting the dirt out of the way and saying, okay, now I know it's there. And that takes fortitude, but it's part of the journey. So between phase 1 and phase 2, going from transparency, that foundation of transparency, to better alignment, we'll want to be mindful and we'll want to be intentional, which is, yes, actually seeing where things may not have looked as good as we thought is part of the reward from phase 1 when you head into phase 2, where you can drive better alignment. You won't get to perfect alignment until you have the transparency. It's impossible. If you can't see it, you can't align. Once we have those 2 phases, then we can go to the third stage of the journey, which is around higher velocity and really raising the velocity of the business. Velocity is speed, ultimately. So once we have the foundation of transparency and better aligned teams, we'll have fewer cross-functional and cross-org collisions. We can actually raise the cadence of focus, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means. And we can use the intelligence from how we're performing on our strategy or not to accelerate. Now, most of your organizations and most organizations have an operating rhythm and a cadence today. There's a notion of QBRs, quarterly business reviews, MORs or MBRs, monthly business reviews or monthly ops reviews. Quarterly, monthly. Once a quarter is once every 12 weeks. Once a month is once every 4 weeks. If we're setting our objectives on a quarterly cadence or refreshing our key results on a quarterly cadence, looking at them one time is not going to get us the results. But for many of our orgs, the cadence that's been put in place today, quarterly or monthly cadences, is a result of not easily having the transparency in the first instance. It's a hard and arduous process to be able to see how are we actually progressing on our results. If we can't see it and it takes us 3 weeks to prepare for the 1 month review, we're not going to be able to do it more often. So when you have the transparency, when the data is flowing, when you can actually see what the results are, then you gain speed because you're not waiting till month 4 or week 4 or week 12 of the quarter. You can do it in week 1 or 2 when you instantly have the data, instantly can see where the teams are blocked, what's in the way, what are our dependencies, and what needs to be resolved. Go to the next slide. We couldn't go perfect. Now, I'm going to talk about 2 examples of 2 organizations that went through this journey and the ROI that they saw and how they're able to gain decision execution advantage, meaning they were able to get to the decisions they needed to make faster because of the journey that they went on. So in terms of the first phase, back to fast transparency, at VMware, which is a 50,000 plus person technology organization in the US, when they embarked on this journey, and by the way, this transparency stage was, I think, 6 to 8 months. It wasn't 6 weeks. What they found was 700 teams were doing duplicative work. That's a lot of teams. That's a lot of money. What they were able to do when they got that transparency is reallocate those teams to other important initiatives that actually were accretive to the company outcomes. At Juniper Networks, a 10,000 person organization, in that phase 1, they focused on everyone being able to see what that company strategy was. And they really anchored on that. It was really important in their employee engagement surveys. They had quite a low score on, do you understand and know how you contribute to the company strategy? After that first phase, they had all 10,000 people able to see the company strategy, and 98% of people responded and said they knew how they contributed to the company strategy. If you know and your team members are responding and saying, I know how I contribute to the company strategy, then fundamentally, the work that they're doing day to day is contributing to the company strategy, which is where you want your team members' effort to go. At VMware, just another quote from one of the champions there. Immediately, everyone knows what is most important to the company and can add value now, which is also important in VMware's case because they were a product of many acquisitions. They would constantly acquire new organizations and bring them into the mix, and those folks needed to know how they made an impact. For the next phase on improving alignment, we go to that next thing here, perfect. At VMware, they had 100% vertical alignment. Top to bottom, everyone was aligned. And they wanted to increase cross-functional alignment. They had a measure previously that was at 3%. They increased it to 30%. Meaning product depends on marketing, which depends on sales, which depends on, and so on and so forth. And then at Juniper, when they had better alignment, they had a 40% increase in employee confidence in what the strategy was, which is also one of their employee engagement surveys. A developer in their organization said, I was going to quit because no one knew what they were doing, and I'm psyched about where we are now. That's what you want from your org. People come to work every day to have purpose. People want purpose in their work. They want to be able to make an impact. And if they're not making an impact at your organization, they're going to go find somewhere else where they can make an impact. And so it's important that they see that. And of course, this strategy execution journey and setting the objectives and results and making that clear how they align provides that for them. And lastly, if we go to raise velocity, at VMware, they were able to execute on key strategy pillars 6 months faster than they planned. When does that ever happen? You actually achieve something faster than you thought. And Juniper went to 12 straight double-digit growth quarters from negative growth, actually, so non-growth. 12 straight double-digit growth quarters. They had the entire organization focused on the right things, focused on what matters, focused on the outcomes they were looking to drive. At Workboard, we help organizations execute their strategy faster and engage everyone in the organization in it. We get to work with incredible organizations, both large and small, transforming, growing, accelerating, changing the way we think about cars, changing the way we think about transactions, changing the way we think about technology left, right, and center. And when we think about who we work with in those organizations, it's everyone from top to bottom or divisions. And for executives, we're teaming up with them to help them set the strategy, mobilize people on what that strategy is to achieve it, communicate it, make it transparent. We're helping them engage managers in the organization to translate that strategy, drive the focus, drive the accountability, and for individuals, execute on the most important outcomes. We go to the next slide. Workboard is the system of record on strategy and its execution for teams. For company leaders, it allows everyone to align long-range strategy and their objectives and results, automate business reviews and scorecards, and then spot risks and opportunities across the business. So it drives clarity, focus, and efficiency for those company leaders, for those business leaders. And then for team members, managers, and team members in the organization, it allows teams to set great objectives and key results, run retrospectives, manage their aligned work, connect into their systems, and then harmonize both their personal objectives and individual performance conversations with the team and strategy, because we don't want that to be disparate. How do we make sure it's all working together and provide that clarity, focus, and efficiency for all? Go to the next slide, please. So if you'd like to see more, you'd like to see a demo, you can download the Workboard guide here. I believe this is a QR code. You can just use your phone to scan it and download the QR code. You can visit our website at workboard.com. But hopefully this gives you a sense, a very quick sense, of course, of what that strategy execution journey looks like and going on it. And then also for those of you who are already on the journey, giving you some ways to be able to talk about the journey you're on with other leaders in the org. So thank you so much. I believe now we have time for questions. I think I see one for sure. How was the alignment measured? Great question. I assume this is in regards to the ROI slide, around 100% vertical alignment and then increasing cross-functional alignment. So in terms of 100% vertical alignment, you can actually measure that within Workboard. You can measure both vertical and cross-functional alignment within Workboard. So when you're putting your objectives and results in the platform, fundamentally it's a structured data system. Because it's structured data, you can actually get analytics and insights based off of the data on how your organization is performing. So we think of them as strategy execution analytics. If you have analytics for everything, you should have it on the most important thing in your business, which is how is your strategy actually performing? One of the things you're able to see is percentage alignment, both vertical and horizontal and cross-functional across the org. Other questions?
Thank you, Sameera.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was really insightful talk. I think we don't have any more questions to you. We will be also sharing this QR code after the session with the participants. I'm quite sure that there will be like more follow-ups based on the conversation you just had. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting this event.
Thank you for having us.
It was really helpful for us to see, how data integrated approach might help for leaders, managers, and the teams in the organization to see clarity. Okay, now it is time to switch to our next session.